Moving second on adoption. All those in favor? Motion's carried. We have one delegation this afternoon. We have Susan McGregor here regarding the Vancouver Island Business Music Conference. So, Susan, you can come to the podium, and you have 10 minutes for your presentation. And if you have any handouts, you can just circulate those.
For everyone, but if we can.
Well, you can just put them on the table. Those getting passed around.
We only need one on that side of the table. How's it going over there?
Must have been something I said last meeting.
Yeah. Usually takes a year or two before people quit coming, but you may able to pull it off in just a few months.
Hello, yes, I'm Susie McGregor.
Yes.
I'm a local singer-songwriter, a resident of Comox, and I have an independent record company. We put on events like Valley Idol and the Music Business Conference most recently. We have been running this annual event for almost 5 years now. We're going into our 5th year. It brings in every aspect of the music industry to meet right here in this beautiful Comox setting. So they can go golfing together and they can go out boating together, and everybody is in a really relaxed place to give the up-and-coming artists the information that they need in a really relaxed, easy, casual, having a coffee kind of atmosphere, which they do not get anywhere else in Canada. All of these other conferences are huge. They're 5,000 people. You don't get anywhere near the people who are talking, the speakers, the panelists. You can kind of wave at them and you can listen to them talk from there. But here we've created a place where you can sit down and have a drink with Downhill. You can talk to Bill Henderson about, Ed Henderson from Chilliwack, Bill's brother was a guitar player to Chilliwack. And last year he was literally grabbing guitar players that came to showcase in the hallway and showing them things. Oh wait, you gotta try this, you gotta try that. So I mean, we've created this really warm, fuzzy event that really is a beautiful reflection of the Valley. It encompasses Comox as well as Courtenay. The event has been around. The first year we ran it in the Comox Rec Centre with the Edgewater and the Lauren. The second year we went into the Sid Williams Theatre. We've utilized Ocala's, the Whistle Stop every year. The Old House Village Inn and Suite. The retreat was up at the Crown Isle. The Crown Isle has been involved in it for many years as well. So we really do show these people all over the Valley and have them leaving and going back all to their corners of the world saying wonderful things about this Valley and about the people in it and about the warm, friendly, present reception that they get and the conference in general. It's really, really a well attended and just a really nice reflection on our Valley. However, I need more funding. You have been very kind and you've supported us with $500 in the past. You've split it the front page of our program as you see the words from the Mayor, Courtenay and Comox. Courtenay's given us $500 and Comox has given us $500. And although it's this amazing event, it's not quite financially viable at this time. I would like to continue to do it, but I need to gather more support from more other areas. So if you can see the proposal in front of you, what I'm proposing is that the city might look at their budget and try to find $10,000 between Comox and Courtenay. And in return, we would not only have advertising, have you on the program, give you your front page like you've always had, have the link on the website. We'd give you 10 passes of scholarships to give to wherever you wanted to put those out. We could also give you an event where somebody like Dan Hill and Bill Henderson would either do a show for yourselves or somebody, the Rotary Club or something that you had chosen to put together in and around the conference. So it would have to be, the conference is October 10th through 14th, so it would have to be the Monday before, the Monday after or the Tuesday before. So the event would happen on either the 9th or the 15th. And the event, as I said, could be that you chose to do something and have some sort of dinner where you're either raising money for something or giving back in some way, or you could choose to put that into one of the schools, into one of the high schools, and have Dan and Bill stand up for 2 hours and give a presentation at the high school about like a sum up and send it over off the music business and how important it is to know all of the aspects and how many different opportunities there are within the industry for songwriters, for performers, for everyone. I'll just make sure that I haven't missed any of my points here. So that's in return, the branding and the advertising, the full page ad in the program, as well as an additional color page ad for whatever programs or whatever you want to tell all of these international guests that are coming here. They have come from Sweden, from Nashville, obviously there's lots, from LA there's lots, from Toronto we get a really heavy attendance as well as Vancouver, but it is about the island and the Island Acts as well, and they get the benefit of all of these people and all the nurturing and the education. So it's arts, it's education, and it's economic stimulation. Thank you for your time.
Are there any questions from members of council for Susie? Yes, go ahead.
Thanks, Susie. When you first started the event, you did use a lot of the facilities at the Comox Community Center, and I'm just wondering, are you planning to use any of those facilities or any of the town facilities at this time?
Could be, and/or, we moved up to the Crown Isle because we had them staying up there, so it was just closer to have them doing things out there. We moved it to Sid, like I mentioned, for the last 3 years. Sid is no longer cost effective for us, so we've moved again to the Westerly and looking at the convention center and all the rooms in there. And certainly if the city was to come aboard and support us some more, we could put some sort of event in there, whether it was a day of event or a different in tandem. Again, it's just then we have a transportation issue bringing them all back and forth. But certainly the ones that are staying up at the Crown Isle, or we could look to tie the Crown Isle back in there. For sure. But we definitely have them boating over here. We definitely have them playing golf up at the Crown Isle, and we could, have them, working out at the playing racquetball. Put that in their items.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, Susie, just so you know, we will take this under advisement at this time. We will be working through our budget process, starting actually with some of the stuff material tonight, but we'll be talking about our cultural and other expenses probably over the next few weeks. So it will take a little bit to get back to you about this, but we appreciate you coming here and telling us about your program.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
We appreciate you considering.
Thank you.
Lots of props.
All right, we have some staff reports tonight to review. First of all, a motion to receive the report for the combined water meter funding.
Move.
On second round receipt.
Second?
Thank you.
Receiving it.
Yeah, we're just receiving it at this point. All those in favor of receipt? Motion's carried. And discussion. Any discussion on it? It's relatively self-explanatory. I thank the Director of Finance for highlighting the key points there. And I'm not sure if there's any other comments or questions. Seeing none, we'll move on then. We have at page 15, the Point Homes local service parcel taxes, and the staff are asking for a recommendation from the committee to forward bylaw 1712 to council for first, second, and third reading.
I'll move that.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. And also for the sanitary sewer lift station, bylaw 1713, be forwarded to council for first, second, and third reading.
Move.
Second. Any discussion on that? Councillor Fletcher.
So just a comment that particular local service area is basically the 17 lots, what we refer to as the Owen English.
Yes.
So I really hope that if in the paper it says the Point Home Sanitary Sewer Lift Station, that everyone in Point Home doesn't suddenly worry that they're going to be charged another $1,100. So
Theirs actually went down.
no, this is a separate one.
I know, but the one you're talking about went down, this one's separate.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say, that I hope it's really, because it's called the Point Home Sanitary Sewer Lift Station, I hope that everyone in Point Homes doesn't get concerned.
I'm sure Spencer and Aaron got that figured out.
The other one was water, that we reduced.
It's all part of an annexation application for the rest of Point Homes, right?
Yeah. If we do get calls, refer to those two?
Yeah. The radio guy's not here.
No, he was there a minute ago.
What he doesn't know won't hurt. Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Page 19, we have the staff memo on the Strategic Community Investment Funds and recommendation for receipt of that, and that we accept the agreement and report to the province that our intended uses for those funds for infrastructure renewal, roads, drains, and sidewalks, and for RCMP officers respectively for the traffic fine revenue sharing grants received under the agreement.
I'll move that.
Is there a seconder? Thank you. Second. Discussion? Staff again have provided a report, Director of Finance, showing the amounts for the next 3 years, which are slightly less than what we already budgeted for, but nothing that we can't overcome. And just so you know, we have applied those in the past generally to policing, and now we're asked to also contribute some of that to infrastructure renewal, which is what the staff report is suggesting. And we have to sign this agreement by the end of the month, hence it's here for your consideration. And I'll go to council next week. Yes, Councilor Fletcher.
And they certainly stressed in the agreement about the importance of reporting to residents and reporting publicly on a high date. So can perhaps the chair to staff, how do we do that?
CEO?
We would do this through the annual report, and form part of a package of information. And we could associate with this issue a press release once it was signed off, advising of what funds we'll be getting this year.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good. Anything further? Seeing none, then all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. All right, now, speaking of budget, we're going to start page 25 with the staff report on our policing, marina, and utility budgets, namely water, sewer, and garbage. And the recommendation is that the draft budgets be included for those items in the draft 2012 and 2015 financial plan. So for discussion purposes, we have a mover of that? Seconder?
Second.
Thank you. And just keep in mind, of course, that we'll be receiving different components of the budget over the next few weeks, and of course, they will all go into one financial plan, which will have to go through the various readings at council. So even though decisions are made here tonight, doesn't mean that we can't go back and revisit it up until, I think, the 15th of May at the latest. All right, Councillor Grant.
Yeah, I was just wondering on the front page, but on page 27 at the bottom, it says cost of offsetting fuel use under BC's Climate Action Charter, and it appears that that's about $12,000. Am I correct in reading that? Is there some way we can mitigate having to pay? Well, I guess the first question is, where does that $12,000 go? Who do we write the check to, and what do they use it for? And is there any way that we can mitigate having to pay that?
Okay. Director of Finance or CAO, whoever wishes to respond.
Two issues. First is, how do we use our offsets? That hasn't been decided or discussed at all, either by staff or at this table. As we get closer to the point in time where we actually have to pay, which will be after year end when we know what the offsets are going to be, then we'll for sure have to make that decision. The province, I believe, would like us to put it in the, is it Pacific Climate Trust?
Carbon Trust.
Pacific Carbon Trust, but there are other options, and staff will explore those. In terms of mitigating the amount we pay, one of the things we can do is reduce our fuel use. So if anyone wants to push the garbage trucks up those steep hills into Comox, they're welcome to volunteer.
And what about the offsets in terms of perhaps the heating system up at the rec center, things like that?
That will help a little, but to be honest, our big emitter is the fleet, right? The fleet and the rec center are the two that are substantial, and this would be number 3. The rules for this are in some ways somewhat arbitrary. The fire department and any police operations, emergency services, are excluded. So we don't need to offset fuel from the fire trucks. But we do have to include contractors who are providing basic services that the town might otherwise in some communities provide, like garbage. So this is why you'll see this line item here, even though the fleet doing the garbage pickups doesn't actually belong to the town. But we still have to find out from them how much fuel they use, convert that to tons of greenhouse gases, and do the offset.
Okay, Councillor Grant.
So, had we not signed on to the Climate Action Charter, we wouldn't be writing this check. Is that correct?
That's true, but we also wouldn't be getting the carbon tax rebate. And what we'll find when we get this budgeted is that essentially this will more or less be the same amount as the carbon tax rebate we've been getting. So we've had 3 years now receiving carbon tax rebates without having to pay any sort of an offset.
Okay.
I think that in practical terms is the way it's going to work out. It might be a few dollars off one way or the other, but roughly speaking, it's the same order of magnitude as the carbon tax that gets rebated to us. And the only way we get that back is because we're in the Climate Action Charter.
Okay, thank you. In terms of the fire truck, the newest one we got, I understand it's supposed to be quite fuel efficient, or in fact almost neutral in terms of its operation, but that doesn't factor in?
The fire department, again, is exempt from the offsets under the Climate Action Charter. The fire truck has a scrubber on it that scrubs the emissions, so it's particulate free,
Okay.
but it still uses diesel fuel.
Fair enough.
And so there is still carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases going up, but the diesel particulate is scrubbed. And the same with the new tandem truck. They both have scrubbing systems built in. So yeah, the particulate emissions are down substantially.
Okay. Any further questions of staff regarding this recommendation as a whole? We have, of course, marina, policing, water and sewer, as well as we just talked a bit about the garbage collection. One question I had about the garbage collection is we're, of course, still waiting to see the outcome of the regional district's solid waste management plan, but if there was pickup of compost, kitchen organics, things like that, that would affect our budget, but obviously not for this next year, from what we can tell.
We haven't discussed this in detail with the contractor, but 2 points. The first is that the yard waste costs, the contract for collection of yard waste, is actually not just collection of yard waste, but processing of yard waste. Because they don't take it to the regional district landfill. They take it to a private contractor who gets it chipped, the wood chipped and the materials composted. So depending on what the regional district charges, if anything, there may actually be potential for cost savings. For instance, if the regional district just said, we'll take this material and there'll be no tipping fee, then the contractor probably saves a little bit of money. The second thing is that we're already doing weekly yard waste collection at a fixed price per week per house. And so, since what is being discussed is that kitchen waste would be added to organics collection, they're not doing any more. They're not doing any more collections. They're not adding another set of trucks to the road. It's fitting into the existing collection cycle. So depending on what happens with the regional tipping fees, it could either be cost neutral, cost a little, or actually save some money. So we'll have to see how that plays out.
And other communities that have done the kitchen organics have gone to bi-weekly garbage pickup as opposed to weekly pickup, so there's...
Another potential cost saving, yes.
All right, so shakes out.
Yeah, I was just looking at our bulk water purchases on page 29, right at the very bottom. And I noticed you're showing for 2012 a 5% increase. And yet if we look back at the actual use from 10 and 11, we're actually down. And then we're showing a 5% increase and then 1% increases over the years. What's the rationale for a 5% increase this year?
We think that the water use in 2010 and 11 was extraordinarily low. We think that it doesn't fit the pattern of typical Comox use. If you go back not 2 years, but 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, you find a substantially different pattern of water use. And so we're expecting, because it's been a relatively dry winter, that we're going to be back to typical use, and if worst comes to worst, it could be more. You never know. Yeah, in 2009, for instance, we used 2,580,000 cubic meters actual, right? Mm-hmm. So that was 2009, and we're budgeting for 2012 130,000 cubic meters less.
But one would hope that with the attention that's put to conservation and things, that would be having some effect on this too. And it seems like that's not being taken into account in this. Like, we've spent a lot of time and effort and energy and money on things to try and educate people more. I would argue that the weather patterns have been dry. I think that they've probably been pretty average over the last 2 years, and I did check them out to see that. And so, I mean, on one hand, I understand that you want to budget a proper number, because the last thing you want to do is miss the target and be low. But, you know, that's a significant difference when it comes to a budget. That's all I'm thinking about. Like a 5% increase when, and I guess time will tell, but, you know, it seems like we spent a lot of time trying to educate people, and I would think that that's had a decent effect on some of the water use.
Your worship, in fact, staff haven't had a budget or a staff person assigned to water education. We've had a few articles in the newsletters, but by and large, we've relied on the regional district for public education. And I understand their budgets may be getting reduced this year. I concur that with the hope that the message is getting out there to the public, particularly since Comox has to pay for all the water it uses. The message we've been trying to convey to the public is every drop used costs us all money. But having said that, I'm not at all confident that the water use pattern of 2010 and 11 will be replicated in 2012.
So if you look at the budget items at the bottom in terms of consumption, in 2010 you budgeted $2.5 million, and then you 2.45 for 2011, and essentially we're leaving that at 2.45 for 2012, and then subsequent years they're showing reductions of 50,000 cubic meters a year. So I mean, it is on the downward scale, and I would agree that, you know, hopefully some of these efforts that we've taken on the Triple E approach of education, engineering, and enforcement, we do share enforcement. I presume that would continue with the regional district as we did in the past couple of summers. So that hopefully will help, and we'll see some more impact hopefully of the water meters that have been installed. So, you know, I suppose we have to be conservative and yet hopeful on the other side as well.
Yeah, and when I said we have educated, I meant we as a valley, not necessarily the town of Comox.
Right. Councilor Fletcher.
Yeah, just further to that, at the Water Committee yesterday, the water efficiency program was severely cut financially. It had been set at $220,000 for the year, with $85,000 for public education. That budget was taken back to $20,000 until such time as the water efficiency plan can be reassessed. So it doesn't look like there's going to be much happening in the near future on that. On the other side, bylaw enforcement, there does remain $20,000 in the RD budget, and I assume we would piggyback again on that as we did in the previous year.
Is that correct, CAO? Yes. Any questions, comments on other aspects of these budgets? Councilor Fletcher again.
So can we look at page 32? And the ever popular water metering under each year. So we have a carry forward this year, 14,000, and that's been advised as a cleanup for, I guess, for some of the projects.
Right.
But we have nothing instituted for 13 through to 16. And I just feel that on a voluntary basis, I would like to see some monies continue to be there. As has been stated, it's not really a fair playing field right now. Some people are watered, some have water meters, some people don't. We have set the rates now. Maybe more people will want to come on board. So I would make a motion that we institute $50,000 per year for water metering on a voluntary basis, and I would suggest that it come out of gas tax monies.
Okay, so that would be an amendment to the main motion. which is to deal with the budgets being included in the financial plan. So $50,000 a year for each year, obviously, of this financial plan, and funding from gas tax. Okay, so is there a seconder for that?
No second.
Second, thank you. Staff, do you have any comments as to source of funding or other aspects of this?
Your worship, as you'll note in the financial plan, we budgeted from the Community Works Fund, I think $400,000 last year. We only drew $100,000. So without having to reallocate priorities, there's still money available there. From our point of view as staff, we'd like to see, we'd like to be able to do a few more multifamilies. We didn't get quite all of them done last year, and so there are a few that we'd like to get to. And the other issue is that as we do secondary suites, they're supposed to have water meters installed, so having a small budget for them as well as volunteers is helpful to us.
Just a quick question on the Community Works funds. Do those expire at some point during this financial plan?
They do, yes.
2015.
At the current, so that whether we could include it for all years of this plan would be the question, but we might not be able to include it for 2016.
Really not, no, but the first four, yes.
Okay, so based on that, Councillor Fletcher, are you okay with making it, if you're tying it to the gas tax monies to 2015, then we basically would be looking at 2012, 2013, 2014, and 2015.
And assuming that 2012 would then look at 64,000?
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, and then 50.
So a total of 200,000 basically over 4 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification,
So,
Councillor.
one question to Dawn. If a guy comes to build a new house, we get him to put a water meter in. So if a guy was going to put a secondary suite in, why wouldn't we have him put the water meter in? Why would we pay for that? If they're going to go to the effort to put that, I mean, it's $250 when you're doing it, so I don't see that a big burden to somebody who's spending $30,000 on a suite.
I think he's, perhaps, are you talking about new construction or existing construction?
Okay, first of all, in terms of new development, any new subdivision, the developer installs the meter box and the meter hardware and then provides us with a water meter that we install later when a house is actually built there. In the meantime, it goes on the shelf in inventory. With regard to secondary suites, I'm going to turn this over to Marvin, and he can explain our approach to date and why we've been trying to incorporate these people in the voluntary metering program.
Okay.
Certainly. In terms of an existing single family, the inclusion of a secondary suite can be quite extensive or can be quite minimal, depending on how the existing layout of the building is. One of the big concerns is that secondary suites become so prevalent legally. Anybody who wants one is selling them. And really by legalizing secondary suites, we have the added benefit then of being able to ensure minimum health and safety. So if we start having fees and high fees associated with it, we do run the risk of then just driving it back underground. And so we did have the voluntary water meter program in place. So under that, people were able to simply request that water meter, and we would see continuing through a town payment, more or less that same policy, so that we don't drive these underground. Existing new construction, in terms of new subdivisions, items like that, they are going to trigger a water meter, and that will be provided for. So in terms of like on Lancaster and those areas.
So you're not talking about 2 water meters, you're talking about 1 for the house, whether it has a suite or not.
That's right.
So it really only would apply to existing homes that get a suite through our program. Okay.
So the other thing is that, at the current rate where the average guy is going to save about $14 a year, I believe, I don't see a stampede of people coming to hook onto our voluntary water meter program. So the fact that I don't agree with the program at all is irrelevant. $50,000 a year, when we're trying to get a capital plan here that's going to be, a reasonable or a lower increase, seems very excessive to me, in that I don't see us ever coming close to spending that kind of money when there's no real incentive for people to go there. So, I think we really have to look at what we're going to do here. If we take it out of gas tax money, then that's money that could be spent in other areas, and we're taking away from that to put it in a fund that I don't think that you're going to have that many people lining up to want these things. Unless something changes and all of a sudden you can save a lot more money. I don't see that. I think that's just an excessive amount, and we're taking away from other things we could do with that money.
Any further comments, questions, or concerns? The example of the fellow who came here last week, he would potentially, if he chose, save up to $105 a year because he was well below the threshold. So, it varies, of course, from the average or median down through very low users. And I would tend to agree. I don't think we're going to see a lot, but I think perhaps the fairness principle does come into play here a bit. And, certainly if we were able to use some of that money for multifamilies as well, they're probably the ones who have the most to complain about fairness, because currently they're paying individually a flat rate of what will be $315 per year. And so, there may be an opportunity to them, their developments being generally low water users, to achieve some benefit there. And the overall target is to reduce our consumption and to reduce the overall costs that we pay and keep our rates down. However, that's up to council. So this is by way of an amendment to the main motion, which is to include all these budgets in the financial plan. So the amendment is at $50,000 a year for 4 years. The set aside out of community works or gas tax monies for installation of water meters on the basis of the voluntary metering program. Councillor Swift.
I think we do need to set aside some money for water meters. I'm not sure what the number is. Is it possible to set aside, not do it over the entire 4 years?
Yes.
Do it for 1 year and see how it goes?
Yeah, but the budget we're establishing or working on here is a 5-year plan. However, we do deal with the budget annually, so we could do it for 1 year to see how it goes, for example. That would be a possibility. I'm hopefully correct on that, CEO?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, one thing we could do is, if we set a target of $10,000 a year rather than $50,000, we're going to review this again next year. If that turns out to be not enough, we could always bump it up. If it's too much, we could bump it down. To start at the high end, when we're going to run into, in my opinion, a problem with our percent of tax increase at the other end, I think we should start this cautiously if we're going to do it at all. So I would suggest that maybe a number like $10,000 a year, and then we're going to review it anyway every year. So we could certainly look at it and say, gee,
All right, well, we have a motion on the floor for $50,000 a year. Is there a motion to amend that further?
I'd make the motion that we amend that to $10,000.
$10,000 a year for 4 years?
Yeah, with the review every year.
So is there a seconder for that?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Well, on that amendment, Councillor Fletcher.
Sir, I'm just concerned that amount, and perhaps through the chair to staff, that amount really isn't a lot to work with. I'm under the understanding that it costs maybe $10,000 to do a strata unit, so
10,000 to 15, Shelley just corrected me
to
on
do
that.
one strata unit. So
Yes.
I don't think that's giving staff enough financial room to really accomplish any multifamilies. But if staff would like to comment through the chair.
I think they just did.
Okay, nodding heads. Okay.
10,000 won't do perhaps even one strata. Now, that being said, it could do perhaps 8 to 10 homes, roughly, depending on what the lay of the land is.
Or more.
Or more.
Well, could do quite a few.
Depending on whether the meter shut off is readily accessible or whether it's buried under concrete somewhere.
So yeah, no, I mean, fair comment on that. Any further discussion? I mean, if there's a number between 10 and 50, that can be explored too. So I don't know whichever council's consensus will come out of that. there's no particular magic to the numbers other than more you can do more with more, obviously. So on the floor, we have 10,000 for 4 years. I feel like an auctioneer. Did it all. Is there any further discussion on that? Seeing none.
Well,
Yes, so sorry.
I was just going to say maybe 10,000 is a bit light, maybe we should go somewhere in the middle. So that it does provide an opportunity to get some of those things cleaned up that need to be cleaned up.
I mean, 10,000 over 4 years, obviously 40,000. We had a total of 200,000. You could look at 25,000 as another number. That might get you a bit more, but and keep in mind it does come out of gas tax money, and yes, we can always spend that money on other things. However, it is not necessarily always easy to spend gas tax money. There are certain criteria that apply to that: clean air, clean water, sewer, of course, reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So what is our rough balance now of gas tax money unallocated, I guess would be the question.
I'll have to bring back an updated report.
But you would bring that back?
In the hundreds of thousands.
Right. Okay. And we'll be looking at our budget as a whole for that kind of thing as we did last year. Yes, Councillor Fletcher.
So I guess just to qualify why I pulled the 50,000 out of the air was that I thought a few multifamilies would be easily $10,000 each. A single family home can be anywhere, I'm understanding, from 600 to maybe well over 1,000. So it was looking at a handful of homes and a handful of multifamilies at 50,000. I don't think it was anything excessive there. It's getting some work done.
Yes. Councillor Grant.
Well, I guess with our gas tax money, though, one of our strategic goals was to work on our trailways, walkways, that kind of thing, and that all qualifies for
Yes.
Gas tax money, as with some possible fleet vehicles and things like that. So, I'm just concerned we take this money out, and what our real goal for this next term was to work on those things. So, I don't know, maybe 10,000 is too low. I think 50,000 is too high. And again, if you can do, say, a dozen or 10 single-family homes, I think that's all you're going to get asking for these things anyway. So
We're looking for the Goldilocks amendment here. What's just right? Any other suggestions? Yes.
Your Worship, can I just ask for some clarification from maybe Don and Shelley as to how many multifamily developments we could potentially get done this year for meter installations?
How many stratas did we get to
We
last year?
could get done in a year, or
Well, how many-
left?
How many didn't? How many are
How
left?
many didn't we get done that would work?
Oh, right off the top of my head, I'm not, maybe 10?
10 times 10 roughly is 100,000, but
She corrected me, it's more like 10 times 15. So, the other thing that Shelley just let me know is that we've had 3 requests for meters so far this week.
single, multifamily?
Just single family, yeah.
Okay.
And just kind of informing them that the program had done, so they wanting to take their name and number, so if it comes back, they'd like to get
Sure.
them installed.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear. All right, any other takers somewhere on either 10 or somewhere between 10 and 50?
Why don't we compromise then 25,000, if that seems to
So
be...
you make that as a motion at 25?
I don't know, that was coming from you.
And a second for that, please?
I'll second it.
Okay, so the number is 25,000 a year. That's what's currently moved, yes?
And again, I can't support that. I mean, we've just been told it costs nearly $15,000 to do one strata unit, so, and there's 10 left to do.
Well,
There's not a whole lot of room.
we have to work on the basis of a consensus here as much as we can, I
I'm
guess.
just stating my...
No, that's fine.
Thank you.
Anything further on that? On the amendment then for 25,000, all those in favor? Those opposed? I'm in favor, so it passes. So we're at 25,000.
same page on that.
On the main motion as amended by all that, which is to include, unless there's further discussion on police, marina, or sewer budget perhaps?
Well, I did make a note on policing, and of course, it's one of those areas where you always love to see the police, but I'm wondering if there's a real need to increase our police at the rate that we do.
Yes.
You know, I'm concerned.
Page are you on?
I don't know. I maybe
Page
know
26 perhaps?
Somewhere, I think it's right there. And so, you know, I'm looking at our overall budget at the end of the day, and
Right.
I know that the public doesn't have a big appetite for big increases and big percentage increases at the end of the day. I mean, ultimately, it would be great if we could have a 0% increase this year, although I don't know how realistic that is. But, you know, I think we're going to have to start looking at all these little things and seeing, and, you know, although this isn't a final thing, I just wonder if there's a real need for the increase year over year on the RCMP. You know, budget times are the worst, and it's, you know, you got to start looking at all of these things to keep our taxes in line.
Well, we did, I think last year, defer the addition of a police officer. I believe we were working on the basis of one every 4 years. So we deferred it for 1 year or something, balanced the budget last year. So we could certainly consider a deferral of it further, or eliminate it altogether. But I do think it's in our, is it our statement of objectives or something? I mean, it is a core service, obviously. I guess you know, it's up to council what they feel. We are going to be discussing policing priorities here as well, but there's no magic to it other than that's what council had previously resolved every 4 years to add a police officer. If we want to defer it further to have any real effect on the budget, well, there is an effect if you defer it, but to put it out past the 5 years, it would take it out entirely. Of course, as you know, as our population grows, that will be a challenge probably 5 years from now. If we get over 15,000 in population, then we're looking at a 90% cost of whatever policing complement we have. But right now, probably for this 5-year plan, we're okay. That's a side issue, but so there's no real magic to it other than whatever council feels comfortable with. That was a previous direction, and we want to defer it from, was it April 2013, to a later year or date we can. Your motions to whatever effect would be welcome.
Well, I guess it would be something that would, you know, it's hard to look at little pieces of the budget and make final decisions, which I know we're not doing here today. But in the overall piece, when we see what kind of percentage increase we'd be looking at or where we're going, I think that may be a more appropriate time to do these kinds of things. I just
want to
highlight it and notice too that between our budget and our actual, we budget a little more than our actual, which I guess is pretty sound practice, but it leads you to wonder why we would continue to increase too. So just
well, I think our director of finance can explain that. There's always a discrepancy because of their staffing issues largely. I think that's correct.
Yeah, there typically are vacancies in the officer position. 2 years ago, with the Olympics and gearing up the year before, they basically had every detachment anywhere near Vancouver at full strength, and in fact some were over, to recall. So the last couple of years have been an exception, but typically there's an officer away on leave or a position that's awaiting filling. So typically there is a vacancy. Different municipalities handle that differently. We budget for our full officer complement, and then if there's a surplus, then we sit down and we discuss how we use the extra funds. Other municipalities assume that there will be vacancies, and essentially they promise they'll fund a certain number of officers, but they don't budget for it. That approach makes me nervous personally, and of course it can get you in trouble in years when the detachment does reach full strength.
So, and I just would point out at this time, as you can see from this budget process, particularly for a couple of new councillors who weren't part of the last budget process, there's a focus on the core service, or in fact the zero-based budget, not a 0% budget, but a zero-based budget, and then our Director of Finance has shown there with input from staff at the bottom of those pages that are relevant with proposed increases to the core service. So what you're talking about, Councillor Grant, is obviously an increase to that zero-based approach which we've used the last year or so. And just from my perspective, even at a zero-based budget, we're looking at inflationary pressures and wage increases built into collective agreements. So I do believe that staff are working on a sort of a rate of inflation type budget. 0% I don't believe is in the cards, because then you'd be essentially going backwards. So, but that being said, we're not looking at the 15% that Campbell River's looking at. So I think we'll see where we get to, but I take it from your comments that you want to leave that comment about policing there for now, and then we'll see where we get to.
Sure, you know, like in a perfect world, of course we'd like that, but I think that as we get a little closer to where we know, it was just a comment to highlight as an area to look at. Yeah, there'll be many more as we go, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so any further comments on the budgets? So the motion is that we forward the draft police protection, marina and garbage, water and sewer budgets for inclusion in the 2012-2015 financial plan with the addition of $25,000 a year for the next 4 years out of gas tax money for the volunteer water program. So that's the motion on the floor. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you for that discussion. More to follow in 2 weeks' time. So we have at page 37, moving away from budget now into the report that the planner has put together on the Courtenay River Estuary Management Plan, which was referred to us by the Angel District in December, looking for comment, or I think November this was, looking for comment by the middle of April. And staff have prepared this report and have come up with a recommendation as printed that the CRD be advised the town involvement in CREMP be limited to informal staff technical input on the town's regulatory and infrastructure services system as it relates to estuary protection, including development permit area guidelines.
I move that recommendation.
Thank you. Your second for that, please. Thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you for the report, Planning Department. And then we have, as touched on earlier, all that crap stuff. Page 155, we have a letter that we had received last week and referred to committee of the whole from Staff Sergeant Gibbons of the RCMP looking for comments on the 2012 policing priorities. And input is requested by April 1st, so that's why it's here today. So we don't need to receive the letter, it's already been received. So are there any further comments we would like to identify for the RCMP? And they've asked us to be as specific as possible. So, yes, Councillor Fletcher.
Well, what I was curious about is if we could have our senior staff team perhaps share their thoughts on it.
Okay.
That's what I was really
Any
looking for.
comments, CIO?
Well, I think one of the more consistent comments that we get from the public related to traffic and general presence in the community is what we hear is lacking. Although when you ask the question or make the comment to the RCMP, they say their presence is very prevalent. It may not be visible all the time, but they are here. But traffic is generally one of the bigger complaints that we get in traffic enforcement, traffic patrols, and that's probably the number one thing we hear about.
I suppose speed,
Yes.
intersection safety.
Yeah.
I had a constituent concerned about the Comox-Anderton intersection from a pedestrian safety point of view. I know our Public Works Department talked to this individual, and there's very limited things we can do, but obviously it depends on the enforcement of that intersection and people not stopping or not paying attention. So I mean, there's that as well. Councilor Kennedy?
Well, I'm always an advocate for proactive involvement with the RCMP and youth, and if that can be mentioned somehow as opposed to reactive involvement by the RCMP and youth. And there used to be, at one time, there was RCMP youth detail officers attached to schools or in the schools, that operated out of the high schools. And times are tough financially, I understand that, but certainly I would recommend that any kind of proactive involvement by the RCMP with youth pays dividends in the long run, particularly in smaller communities.
Okay. Yes, Councilor Grant?
Well, I would agree with Richard that, I think that the RCMP probably do a pretty good job, but their presence doesn't seem as strong as the number of officers that we seem to pay for. And, whether or not that's because you just don't see them or whatever, I know they're out there doing their job, but maybe just a little more presence with police cars and stuff. I think it gives some comfort to the citizens, as long as they don't put the speed traps near my house. But I think that's important for the public to see
So
that show.
visibility, presence, we do have the benefit of quite a few of the RCMP staff living in Comox, which is a desirable community, so that does help. Anyone who hasn't had a chance on council to go to a ride-along, I would encourage them to do so and contact perhaps Staff Sergeant Gibbings. It's quite an interesting experience, and especially on a Friday or Saturday night. But they do get around, and although we might pay for 11 officers and is it 1/3 of a police dog or something? We do.
Back end to the front end.
we don't get obviously all 11 on call at any one time, but there are anywhere from 4 to 7 vehicles on the road throughout the valley, and they do get around. And I suppose they're not here as often as perhaps in the past, given the fact that we have 2 fewer pubs in town right now. But I know they make an effort, and they certainly would if you rode along with them, because I'm sure they'd want to show you that they made an effort. Anyway, that's aside.
I'm not sure if other members of staff have any.
Yeah, our parks and building maintenance, of course, you deal with vandalism issues.
Yeah, our biggest vandalism threat that we face out there is graffiti, and although it seems rather benign on the grand scale of things, it's still very, very costly to the community and a genuine nuisance. So, from my perspective, graffiti and vandalism is a reality. It's something we tend to almost on a weekly basis. It goes in cycles. And the other is the potential threat in the northeast woods area, and that's from localized parties that usually have fires associated with them. And
right.
That is a really high risk for us, and we work quite closely with the RCMP and the fire department and the Friends and a number of other groups, the school included. Trying to work together to prevent that. So we're taking a team approach to it, but it would be nice to see the RCMP come on board a little bit more. We seem to do the bulk of frontline work, and from time to time, there's nothing better than seeing a car coming through to shake things up. So
More visibility and more
a
proactive.
little higher presence in that neck of the woods.
Sia, what about I know he's not here, but our bylaw officer, I know he works with the RCMP on noise complaints and other issues. Good working relationship there, I assume?
I believe so, and the comments are that there is general communication on a regular basis. We will be bringing it forward. Shelley's just finished up drafting the revised fireworks bylaw that again brings in some consistency with the City of Courtenay, but provides more enforcement ability as well. So we are working on those initiatives as they come forward.
Speaking to my counterparts in Cumberland and Courtenay today, there's a lingering concern around medical marijuana licensing, which is handled by Health Canada. And the concern in some jurisdictions is that those facilities are unknown to the municipality, unknown to the police and fire departments. However, they're licensed through Health Canada, and some seem to be almost commercial in nature. It would be a concern, obviously, to our fire department should there be an issue. Have there been any concerns raised in that regard other than what I've heard through the valley? And I know it's come up at UBCM, but there is that lingering concern. I suppose if we were to be supportive of our adjacent communities, it might be one worth highlighting. And I know Mayor Jangelo went to see our MP about that at some point. So it's a moving target right now. Councillor Fletcher.
Just to hear the staff thoughts off the top of my head, and I certainly concur with the concern about youth, and to dial it in a little bit more, my perception is that it's the hard chemical drug activity, crystal meth, the ecstasy, and I just think that as a catalyst for so much downwards, whether it's domestic violence, or then it becomes property theft, or whether it becomes then social issues, homelessness, addiction counseling. I mean, and again, if you can nip that in the bud at a youth level, I think you have much more success. So I would concur with absolutely youth, and to add to that hard drug activity.
Well, I'm sure we would all support the DARE program, which is underway, has been underway for a number of years in grade 5, so grade 6 is one of the two. And I understand that continues, so good education there. Bicycle helmet compliance. I know that's a pet peeve for lots of people. I just look at people not wearing bicycle helmets and say, you're being stupid. And that's your problem, but I've never seen anyone get a ticket, so I don't know whether that's something that you think should be addressed. CAO?
I wear my helmet.
You can see you coming for miles.
Yeah.
He's got the SpongeBob helmet. All right, well, I just throw that out there for consideration. So we can draft a suitable letter to Staff Secretary Gibbons and include those.
And it'll be written in a way that these aren't complaints, these are areas that we see as priority, and generally our relationship with the RCMP has been very positive, and continues to be so.
We'll continue to have, hopefully, a new inspector who's joining the Valley Detachment shortly come to one of our committees in the near future.
And bike helmet.
All right, so that's great. We've got enough, unless there's anything further on that. That completes our agenda. I'm not sure to adjourn to be in order. Second? Second. All in favor? Carried.
People in there?
Yeah.